I'm Charlotte and this is A Tired Man Tries to Read. So for the first instalment I thought I would talk you through some of the books I've bought in May and June. And here they are, a fairly big stack. These are just the new ones that I bought. I bought quite a few secondhand as well, so we'll just start with these, I think. I should probably say as well that you don't have to be a man to maybe enjoy some of the books I'm recommending. I'm not going to be reviewing any parenting books. It's just that if you maybe buy more books than you ever can read, is probably a signifier of whether you'll relate to me or not. I love buying books. I've always bought too many. But since being a mum, I definitely buy more than I can ever get through, and I'm always tired and I get really frustrated that I can't read the way I used to. So I thought I'd do this for those who might feel similarly, for whatever reason, maybe working too much or just being in a book reading rut, which we all get in. So this last couple of months I've bought quite a few from supermarkets. I've bought a couple off the internet and one from Waterstones. So I'll start with the supermarket buys. We've got Robert Webb's How Not to Be a Boy, which I wanted to get for ages. There's Robert Webb. If you didn't know who he was, he's in Peep Show, which I'd never seen. So you don't need to really enjoy his comedy, I don't think, to enjoy this book. It says, Robert Webb tried to follow the rules for being a man. Don't cry, drink beer, play rough, and don't talk about feelings. Looking back over his life, he asked whether these rules are actually any use to anyone. So I was drawn to this as a feminist, as a mother of a son, I suppose, did have an influence in me. I've always been interested in books about how masculinity corners men. I loved Grayson Perry's book. So you don't often find them, so I was really, really keen to read this, and it charts his pretty working class childhood as well, which I thought would be interesting. So there's that one. I got these two monster books by Yuval Noah Harari. They are Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, and Homo, Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. So they've got excellent reviews on them, which draws me in. One review is Barack Obama, interesting and provocative. It gives you a sense, a perspective on how briefly we've been on this earth. And the other is Jarvis Cocker, who I really like. So I thought, well, his review meant something to me. Shows us where mankind is headed in an absolutely clear-sighted and accessible manner. So the first one, which I have actually already read, which shows you how good it is that I managed to get through it, is about the history of Homo sapiens from the minute they stepped on the earth to, not that they landed on the earth, but, you know, from the minute they can be charted as being on the earth, all the way to now. It's quite dark in places. It makes a lot of bold statements, which you'll love as you're reading them, but afterwards I did question them, and I had some interesting conversations on Instagram with some other people who'd read it, who agreed with me and knew more than me, and said that yes, he does oversimplify things a bit, but I'm not writing a dissertation about this. I'm just reading it for pleasure, and I'm not a massive history buff, so I really enjoyed it. That was more or less a review, which I was meant to be doing in the next video, but I will be reading this, which I haven't managed to get into yet, and this is about the future of humankind. It looks quite dark. I think it's going to be really provocative as well, probably more so than the other one, so I'm excited to get into that one. I also got Reni Eddo-Lodge's Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race, which has got one of the best covers ever, with this embossed, slightly hidden white people bit, which I think is cool. And this is a book I got out from the library about a year ago when it was in hardback. Read the first chapter and was like, this book is so good, I have to own it. So it was pointless carrying on because I got to buy it. Then I didn't take the book back, chalked up an enormous fine, more than paid for the book itself when I returned it, and didn't have any money to actually buy the book. So that is how I generally operate when I get a library book out. I think of it as my way of contributing to our library services with my constant paying of fines. Next time I've got to take it out on my son's card because they can't get fined. But this is the book that sparked a national conversation exploring everything from eradicated black history to the inextricable link between class and race. It's an essential handbook for anyone who wants to understand race relations in Britain today. My dad has already borrowed it and returned it and said it was amazing, so that's always a good sign. And the fact that this was in a supermarket, amazing. Shows shows that everybody's reading it, which is really cool. This is called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, and it's in the cool orange penguin design that they've done in the last 6 years or so, I think, maybe a bit longer. Trying to mimic that old penguin look, which I love. I'm just checking that I'm not going to be disturbed by the return of my child. Yeah, it's really cool. Anything that has this design, Penguin have got it nailed, because I just want to have it straight away. And this was no different. I've been drawn to this and repelled by it in equal measure, because as someone who no longer sleeps a full night, I'm scared as to what the consequences are, but at the same time I'm also intrigued. It's a very odd mix. Apparently I'm going to get uglier, unhappier and iller, which is always good news. But I did read the first chapter, despite my husband saying, please don't read that book. I took his advice completely and dove straight in. And the style that Matthew Walker has is really cool. He just sounds like a man obsessed. So it's always a pleasure to read a book when the writer is really into their subject. And he really does sound super interested in sleep. So we'll give that one a go, and I'll let you know what it's like. And then the two fiction ones I got, not the last two, but the two fiction ones I got were from the internet. They are new hardback fiction, which is unheard of that I buy that. I haven't bought new hardback fiction for years and years and years, since I worked in a bookshop. So this was really nice to just indulge. The first one I was drawn to, it's called Sight by Jessie Greengrass, and it was the subject matter that attracted me. Combination of being about connections, love, mother-daughter relationships, and also about science. So there's 3 scientists that she talks about. Wilhelm Röntgen's who discovered the X-ray, Sigmund Freud, who obviously developed psychoanalysis, and then the work of the artist Jan van Riemsdyk, who he was there as the artist when they first performed an autopsy on a dead pregnant woman. So I didn't actually know that part of it until I read it. I've actually already finished this one. I would say, before you even think about buying it, if you do have any kind of birth trauma or any kind of trauma relating to autopsies, I would avoid this book, because it's not a massive portion of the book, and it's really, really beautifully done, very sensitively done. But I would say it is still quite graphic, and I found it quite difficult to read that bit. So, yeah, I would recommend it though, just generally if you're interested in human nature, because that's what drew me to it, and that's what it is. It's a dark book about motherhood, and that is pretty much what I'm into. So I always get books like this, and this was not a disappointment. Really odd cover though, don't you think? It kind of makes me think of, like, I don't know, like vampire books. Maybe it's me. I wouldn't have done this cover. It is beautiful when you look at it. It's a sort of really pale skinned woman in this nightgown falling. So it is really beautiful, but there's something about the colour scheme which makes me think vampires. Anyway, the other book is beautiful, and I probably bought it because it was beautiful. It's Asymmetry by Halliday. The subject matter is really quite odd. It's a novel that's split into 2 different stories. One is an editor called Alice, who's having an affair with a famous writer, and the other is Amar, who's an economist en route to Kurdistan. Really jarring narratives. Sorry if you can hear my dog barking. He just hates being shut out of what he deems to be his room. Yeah, and then there's Ezra Blazer, who is the famous writer that Alice is having an affair with. He comes in the 3rd part to give his Desert Island Discs talk on the radio. I can't really tell you what attracted me to it apart from the cover. Oh, actually, I know what it was. It was because in the back there's a review by Louise Erdrich, who is the Native American Ojibwe writer, and she can do no wrong for me. So she says, Asymmetry is a novel of deceptive lightness and a sort of melancholy joy. She writes with tender, laugh-aloud wit, but under her formidable, reckoning gaze, a world of compelling characters emerges. She steps onto the literary stage with the energy of a debut novelist and the confidence of a mature writer. Wait, if she says so, I agree. So I bought that one because I thought it looked super cool. And is this the one with the... Oh no, this is the one with the... I always check under the dust jacket to see what it looks like underneath. And it's this final one that's got a really nice embossed hair, I think that is, and just a super cool cover for all you book geeks out there. This is Sharp by Michelle Dean, which is about the women who made an art of having an opinion. So it's people like Dorothy Parker, Hannah Arendt, who I'm not sure if I pronounce her name right, Mary McCarthy, Susan Sontag, Joan Didion, Nora Ephron and Janet Malcolm. It just looks super awesome. I went into Waterstones just to browse, and the lady who works there, who I've worked with for years, she just came up to me and she was like, Charlotte, this book is for you, and put it in my hand. I managed to resist on that occasion, but then I just had to get it about a week later. I couldn't stop thinking about it, mostly because it then appeared again on my favourite book vlog, Shani Reads, and if Shan likes it, then I've got to have it. So I went back and bought it with a card that I explained to the bookseller, I don't know if this has enough money on it, and he laughed, and it did have enough money on it, so it ended well. But I won't be buying anything else until I get paid, and that includes food. So I'm looking forward to reading this. It's one of those books that might sit on my shelves for a bit, so I'm going to have to really force myself. Not because I won't enjoy it, but because I'll think, oh, I know I need a good week, you know, of clear time to dedicate to this, and there is no such thing. So these are my purchases for May and June. As I say, I've already read some, so I'll try and do a cheeky little review now of the ones I've read, and then I'll come back to you again when I finish the lot.